They caught a glimpse of your mind before they ever learned your name. They sensed the gravity in your quiet, the kind that rattles small spirits, the kind that makes fragile egos gossip. You never required a platform to make noise. Your aura is the warning. The moment you step in, every fragile heart in the space begins hunting for a place to disappear. They would never confess it, but your brilliance unnerves them. It strips away their disguises. It blows their cover because you aren't following the script. They are. And the worst part, you're winning without even trying. Behind every plastic grin they flash, your way hides a quiet panic. You perceive beyond the surface. You pick up on what goes unspoken. Your instinct runs like a scalpel, sharp, exact, ruthless, and it's been slicing through deception, pride, and scheming from the very start. That's the reason they push you to the margins. That's why they gossip when you're not around. That's why you've always sensed you didn't belong in rooms where the rest seemed perfectly at ease. But take this in. Outsiders are simply those too genuine to play along. You're not unusual. You're a threat to their grip, to their fantasies, to the brittle framework they constructed to keep minds like yours locked out of influence. The reality is, most individuals aren't afraid of being misread. They fear being decoded by someone like you. Because once someone witnesses the machinery behind the stage, the whole charade crumbles. That's exactly what your mind performs. It doesn't merely notice, it dissects. It rewrites the code. It ignites flames in corners that have been frozen for ages. And that's why they treat you like a menace, because you are. If you're still here absorbing this, it's because you recognized it, the solitude, the backstabbing, the endless self-doubt. But let's name it for what it truly was. Jealousy in sheep's clothing. You weren't difficult to love. They simply lacked the backbone to hold something that authentic. And the universe, it never turned its back on you. It's been honing you in the shadows. Every pitch black evening, every sob, every slammed door carried a hidden message. It was rerouting, not rejecting. You've been trudging through tempests designed to shatter most. And somehow you emerged sharper, clearer, colder, wiser. And while they were occupied doubting you, you were quietly gathering evidence, decoding cycles, storing faces. You never sought payback. Your evolution is the revenge. Your calm is evidence, and your stillness. That signals no surrender. That signals strategy. Because the chosen don't yell, they calculate, they don't beg for attention. They pull it in, and now it's your chapter. It's your moment. You're not approaching power. You embody it. And before we press on, gratitude. Thank you for being one of the genuine souls. If this strikes a chord in your spirit, then tap the like button and subscribe. That goes beyond encouragement. It's alliance. It's how we amplify this signal and signal to the world that we're finished being invisible. Now let's raise the volume. Let's establish one thing beyond doubt. Your instinct isn't some adorable feeling. It's ancestral. It's timeless. It's survival encoded into your very being. That gut sense you experience before something goes sideways. That certainty in your core when someone's bending the truth. That chill you feel before honesty lands. That's beyond mere gut feeling. It's brilliance. And it rings louder now than it ever has. Why? Because the planet is transforming. The disguises are slipping. And those who witness clearly are stepping up. Take a look around. Everything they constructed is fracturing. Frameworks, stories, hierarchies, their manufactured smiles are dissolving under the weight of genuineness. And you're not falling apart. You're shattering limits. You're the stillness after the chaos. You're the wisdom after the pain. And what's striking, you never requested any of this. You didn't chase influence. You became it by outlasting what was meant to crush you. They tried to dismiss you, label you as overly intense, overly deep, overly sensitive. But now those very qualities are being celebrated as superpowers. What used to paint a target on your back now makes you the template. They study your patterns now. They borrow your style. They mirror your frequency. But they can never duplicate the origin, because this didn't come from a trend. You earned it in silence, and your silence, it no longer whispers, it roars. It's a thunder wrapped in serenity. It declares, I know exactly who I am, and I require no permission to embody it. This is your season. No more shrinking, no more doubting, no more waiting for the planet to catch up. You are the shift, you are the reflection they dodge, And your radiance, it isn't for show, it's for revolution. They see it now. They know you're intelligent, dangerously intelligent. And that terrifies them, not because of what you grasp, but because of what you might unveil. Keep moving, keep glowing, keep slicing through the static. The ones who genuinely perceive you, they're observing. The ones who tried to dim your shine, they're spiraling. You were never meant to disappear into the crowd. You are the anomaly, the template, the revolution. Welcome home. And hey, chosen one. Yeah, you with the mind they can't decode. The one whose instinct cuts through fake energy like a blade. You've always sensed that tension in the space when you speak truth without even trying. That's no accident. That's force. And now it's time to own it. Drop the number 777 in the comments if you're done dimming your brilliance, just to keep others at ease. Let the planet know you're stepping into full awareness. No filters, no hesitation. Because this isn't merely a video. This is your reflection, your reminder, your confirmation that you were never insane, never excessive. You were simply far ahead. And those stares they give you, that strange shift in atmosphere when you voice your mind, that's respect trying to disguise itself as fear. You were never meant to blend in. You are the signal in the static, so if you're still here, stay, hang around. If your spirit resonates with this transmission, you won't be able to look away anyway. This is your moment, your map, your mirror. Now, let's dissect it all piece by piece, and trust me, if you truly are one of the rare ones, you won't just watch till the end. You'll sense it. Let's get into it. Number 1, you don't flaunt. You dismantle them in silence. They labeled you quiet, but what they truly meant was you couldn't be manipulated. They assumed silence equaled weakness, that if you weren't vocal, you must lack substance. But let's set the record straight. You never needed volume to lift the standard. You've been the hurricane rolling in quiet, the tremor that doesn't signal before splitting the ground. And while they were busy flexing hollow bravado in front of crowds, you were observing, mapping, stacking insight, reading the space with eyes that look through people, not just at them. You don't merely absorb what's spoken, you absorb what's concealed. That's not skill, that's threat-level perception. And yes, it unnerves them. See, people like them, they require noise. They require the spotlight to mask the fact that there's nothing authentic propping them up. Their confidence is a costume. Yours, it's bone deep. It's unmovable because it was forged in silence. Built in spaces where no one cheered. Refined through evenings where you had to cheer for yourself just to keep moving. While they were loud in their bubbles, you were evolving in the shadows. And now they sense it. They sense it in the way you walk into a space without trying to impress anyone, in the way you speak only when it counts. And when you do, it strikes. They can't predict you, can't contain you, can't figure out what drives someone who clearly isn't playing the same survival game they are. Your energy lands differently because it's genuine. It's not built on approval. It's built on vision. You unnerve them because they don't know what you know. Or worse, they do. Deep down, they know you see them. You see through the show, through the fake alliances, through every power play they execute. And nothing threatens a manipulator more than someone who sees too clearly and won't say a word. That's what shatters them. Not confrontation, but the quiet knowing in your eyes that says, I already decoded you. They'll probe you over and over, not to grow from you, but to soothe themselves, to hunt for a crack in your armor, a flaw they can spotlight, a moment where you collapse like they would, but you never do. And that's the blow they didn't anticipate. Every time they believe they've cracked your code, you reveal they were playing checkers while you were designing the entire chessboard. So why don't you speak more? Why don't you showcase? Because real power demands no proof. You don't waste energy clarifying genius to those committed to misunderstanding it. You let your results echo. You let your silence weigh more than their shouts. Because when you move with purpose. And every step you take reshapes the ground they thought was solid. And let's discuss that quiet certainty they despise so much. You know what it truly is? It's undeniable clarity. You're not scattered like them. You don't need group approval to validate your thoughts. You don't need a crowd to feel witnessed. Your instinct has been shouting truths long before anyone else could even recognize the pattern. And now that it's all unfolding exactly as you predicted, suddenly everyone's paying attention. But don't get it twisted. They'll never credit you publicly. Why? Because if they confess how right you were, they must confess how wrong they've been. They'll pretend they didn't hear you say it first. They'll behave as if it's just obvious now, but deep down they know. They remember you were the one who cautioned them, the one who saw it coming, the one who always knew. And that right there, that's what frightens them the most. Because now they can't dismiss it anymore. You're no longer merely the quiet one. You're the template, the one who doesn't merely survive, but thrives in silence, conquers in peace, and evolves with grace. They feel you rising even when you haven't said a word. That's why they act strange around you. That's why they copy you without acknowledgement. That's why they keep probing you. You've become their gauge of greatness. And nothing frustrates the loud and hollow more than being outpaced by the quiet and full. Let them talk. Let them misinterpret. Let them construct their little narratives and circle each other with fantasies. You're not competing with noise. You're constructing legacy in silence. While they chase reactions, you chase outcomes. While they chase clout, you chase clarity. While they crumble from doubt, you rise from depth. And if you've ever questioned why they couldn't handle your energy, it's because your stillness declares the truth too loudly for their comfort. You reflect what they aren't prepared to confront. You don't just think differently, you are different. And that difference, that's the weapon they'll never be able to match. You're not like them, and that's precisely why you win. So don't second-guess that quiet fire inside you. It was never meant to blaze loud. It was meant to burn long. You are the slow, steady rise that nobody anticipated, but everybody will sense. You're the silence that echoes longer than their noise. You're the move they didn't anticipate, the force they can't stop, the ending they didn't script, but now must experience. This isn't just about being intelligent, it's about being untouchable. You weren't born to explain your mind. You were born to reshape theirs. And if they can't handle that, let them break themselves trying to keep pace. Because the genuine ones, the chosen ones, we don't showcase, we show up silently, relentlessly, unapologetically, and we never leave empty-handed. Number 2, you don't read people, you decode them. They despise how quickly you decipher them, because once you see through someone, they can't control you anymore. You don't wander into spaces blind. You wander in with radar, scanning everything, picking up on tones, glances, pauses, the gaps between words. Where others get distracted by grins and handshakes, you're already 2 steps past the surface. You hear the genuine message buried beneath their polished lies. You see the fear behind their manufactured confidence. You sense the power plays before they even move a piece. That's not paranoia, that's precision. Imagine this. You're at a table with 10 people, everyone's laughing, performing, showing off, but you're quiet. Not because you don't belong, but because you already know who's faking, who's scheming, who's watching you a bit too closely. You know who's smiling with their mouth but concealing a blade in their energy. It's not just that you read people, it's that you grasp their motives before they do. That's what rattles them. People feel exposed around you, and not in the comforting way, in the revealed way, in the oh no, they know kind of way. That's why they flinch, that's why they push back. You've got this unspoken skill of unraveling people with a single look, a single question, a single smirk. You don't merely observe, you intercept. Wisdom doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it wanders in quietly with no name tag, no degree, just presence. They ask, where did you acquire that? As if truth demands a classroom, as if instinct comes with a certificate, as if deep comprehension must be earned the way they earned it, by following someone else's rules. But you didn't memorize the script. You wrote your own, and that's what infuriates them. In workplaces, in social circles, in family gatherings, you see the game behind the dialogue. You notice how that one colleague keeps throwing shade disguised as humor. How your friend always subtly competes with you. How your boss over-explains something because deep down they feel threatened that you learn faster than they did. You absorb it all and you say nothing because you don't need to validate it. Just knowing is enough. That's your edge, your superpower. They pretend to be honest, you pretend to believe them. That's the unspoken agreement between the wolf and the sheep. And look, it's not that you're trying to expose people, you're simply exhausted from pretending not to see the chaos when it's scrawled all over their energy. You've had to bite your tongue more times than you can count. You've watched people underestimate you, try to instruct you in things you already mastered in silence. You've seen people act like you're slow just because you don't argue. But the truth is, you were never behind. You were simply watching the bigger picture. Imagine you're in a meeting, Everyone's throwing around complex terms, trying to look smart. You stay quiet, and in that silence, you're mapping out who's lying, who's bluffing, who's concealing insecurity behind jargon. Then with one question, just one, you slice through all the noise, and suddenly the space shifts because now they realize you weren't quiet, because you had nothing to say. You were quiet because you were watching them stumble in real time. You don't merely read the space, you redesign it with a single sentence. They try to check your resume, your background, your credentials, as if titles define truth, as if your insight needs validation to be genuine. But what they don't comprehend is you've been learning from life while they were stuck memorizing lessons. Your experiences taught you what textbooks never could. You absorbed wisdom from pain, patterns, and observation. You studied people the way artists study light, quietly, carefully, relentlessly. And no, you're not overly sensitive, you're overly aware, and awareness in a world constructed on deception, that's a threat. That's why they label you, call you cold, call you strange, say you're overly intense. Because if they can't match your depth, they'll try to drown your truth. But you're not here to play small, just to make shallow people comfortable. You're here to see it all and still choose your moves with grace. They don't know how to handle someone who listens more than they speak, who asks genuine questions, who doesn't fall for the bait, who's immune to manipulation because they've witnessed every trick in the book and probably wrote a few themselves. You're not shocked by betrayal anymore. You saw it coming chapters ago. You simply stayed quiet because sometimes the finest way to end a lie is to let it finish itself. Imagine this. You're walking through life with X-ray vision while everyone else is distracted by glitter. They chase clout. You sense motive. They purchase personas. You read patterns. They live in denial. You operate from truth, and that truth, that's your weapon. Quiet, clean, ruthless. You've mastered the art of pretending not to know, just to watch who reveals themselves. So when they question your intelligence, when they doubt your path, let them try to measure your mind with their shallow rulers. Let them confuse silence with ignorance. All while you're quietly building an empire in your mind. While you're stacking understanding that they'll never reach because they're too busy trying to impress and you're too busy trying to see. This world tries to reward noise, but secretly it bows to clarity, and clarity is your birthright. Your mind doesn't merely think. It senses patterns before they unfold. Your soul doesn't guess. It remembers what others have forgotten. That's beyond mere intellect. That's legacy. So when they whisper about you, when they question how you always just know, smile. Because what they call luck is actually your pattern recognition. What they call strange is actually your instinct outpacing their logic. What they call mysterious is actually you playing the game 10 steps ahead. They try to dim your light by questioning your path. But your glow, it doesn't flicker. It blinds. And the more they try to fit you into their boxes, the more your brilliance shatters their expectations. You're not here to explain how you know. You are not here to prove what you've perceived. You are here to embody it loudly, quietly, boldly. Let them wonder. Let them stare. Let them whisper, because you don't merely see people, you expose illusions without even lifting a finger. And that's what makes you dangerous. Number 3, they studied books. You survived wars. You didn't absorb it from a textbook. You lived it. That's why your wisdom strikes harder and heals deeper. They flaunt degrees, certificates, polished titles stamped by systems that reward memory over meaning. And sure, they might sound intelligent in a meeting or drop buzzwords in front of a crowd, but when life actually strikes, they fold, because knowledge printed on paper fades fast when reality doesn't follow the script. Meanwhile, you learned in the dark. You learned when no one was watching, when no one cared, when you had to decipher it or collapse. Your intelligence wasn't downloaded, it was earned. And that's why you process the way you do, why your mind doesn't merely analyze, it absorbs. You connect dots others don't even perceive. You walk into chaos and start making sense of it like it's second nature. People wonder how you remain so calm in moments of madness. It's because the madness trained you. You've lived through confusion so loud that now nothing shakes you. You faced problems that couldn't be solved with theory, and you solved them regardless. There's a kind of intelligence that can't be measured. It's found in the way a person reconstructs themselves when everything collapses. Imagine two people standing at the edge of disaster. one with a PhD in how to manage crisis. The other you with scars, instincts, and a memory full of moments where you had no choice but to make it work. Guess who remains standing when it's over? Exactly. You don't lead because you try to. You lead because people follow the energy of someone who's endured it and didn't let it destroy them. You never declared yourself wise, never asked to be anyone's teacher, and yet, when the storm arrives, who do they turn to? Who do they consult for advice when their theories crumble? Who do they watch when they don't know what to do next? You. Because there's something about the way you move, the way you speak only when necessary, the way you deliver answers that don't just sound correct, they feel correct, like truth wrapped in calm, like clarity delivered without ego. You're not loud about it. You don't shove your story in people's faces. But when you speak, it strikes because they know what you're saying emerges from genuine pain, genuine healing, genuine lessons paid for in time, solitude, and strength. You didn't Google the answers. You earned them in silence. And that's what makes your mind dangerous. It's not built on second-hand knowledge, it's been pressure-tested by the universe itself. When people witness how fast you grasp things, how deeply you process what others skim over, it rattles them because they've spent years chasing recognition while you've been mastering awareness. They showcase what they've learned. You embody what you've survived. They don't comprehend how someone who never brags, never begs for attention, never flaunts their brilliance, somehow outshines them in every space. But real power doesn't beg to be witnessed. It becomes unavoidable. You've never had to shout your worth. You've let your energy do the talking. And that quiet, grounded, earned energy, it draws genuine ones in and exposes the fake ones instantly. That's why people either respect you deeply or despise you quietly. There's rarely an in-between. And if you've ever wondered why you don't fit into traditional systems, it's because you weren't designed to. You're not a carbon copy. You're not following their path. You're carving your own with tools they didn't even know existed. Your intelligence is deep, raw, emotional, spiritual, strategic. It's the kind of knowing that emerges from watching everything collapse and still finding the thread of meaning in the wreckage. You're not wise because you know everything. You're wise because you've lost everything and still chose to understand. So let them measure IQ. Let them collect trophies. Let them memorize empty phrases to impress empty minds. You'll be too busy turning pain into insight, struggle into strength, isolation into mastery, because what they call just surviving, you turned into a template for rising. They don't have to comprehend it. They just have to witness it. And believe me, they are watching. And if they ever ask, "How do you know all this?" you won't even need to answer, because the truth is, you remember the pain that instructed you. And that memory, that's the sharpest wisdom anyone can carry. You never needed to be taught what the fire already revealed. You are the evidence that experience is the highest form of education, and the diploma is the unshakable mind you carry around every single day. Number 4, you don't speak to impress. You exist to disrupt. Your silence says more than their loudest lies. That's why your presence makes them twitch. You don't need to enter a space loud. You just enter. And that alone is enough to make the insecure shift in their seats. You walk in with that unshakable stillness, the kind that makes people second-guess themselves, suddenly unsure if their masks are still holding. Your energy isn't just calm, it's confrontational without a single word. You force people to see themselves simply by existing. They don't know what it is about you, but they sense it. The way conversation dips for a second when you walk past. The way eyes dart toward you and then quickly away. The way people start fidgeting with their clothes, their words, their image. All because something about your presence reveals how much of them is performance. You are a mirror they didn't request, but can't avoid. And it's not because you're trying to shake things up. You're simply authentic. And in a world addicted to filters, costumes, and clout chasing, authenticity hits like a punch to the gut. It reveals, it humbles, it hurts, and that's why your presence feels like a threat. You remind people of the version of themselves they've abandoned. You awaken parts of them they've buried. You bring gravity into spaces constructed on fluff. Imagine this. A space full of small talk, inflated egos, flexed insecurities, everyone pretending, everyone performing. Then you show up, no facade, no games, just presence. And suddenly their jokes don't land. Their arrogance deflates. Their shallow confidence begins to crack. That's not because you're trying to ruin the vibe. It's because your existence raises the frequency and everything fake starts to malfunction. You don't disturb the peace. You reveal that there was never peace to begin with. They begin to ask themselves, why do they look so grounded? How do they remain so calm? Why can't I shake their gaze? Why do they always know more without saying anything? But they don't truly want the answer. Because the truth is, you listen to things they can't hear. You comprehend silence like it's a language. You hear the hesitations in people's voices. You catch the shift in their tone. You sense when energy turns cold, when intentions twist, when someone's words stop matching their vibe. It's not magic. It's mastery. You've spent years in spaces where no one clapped, where you had to learn not just to survive but to observe, and now your awareness walks into every space before you do. That's what they sense. That's what they're reacting to. You never chased validation. Never needed to. Because you've got something stronger. An internal compass that doesn't deceive. A knowing that doesn't stutter. You don't need to announce who you are. Your silence already did. And the ones who grasp it, they sense it. The ones who don't, they'll talk about you in circles trying to define what can't be labeled. Some people build presence with noise. You built yours with truth. They wonder how you know things you shouldn't. How you always see the cracks in people's masks. How you remain 10 steps ahead without trying. But what they call intuition is really attention. You pay attention to everything, to energy, to silence, to patterns. You've learned that what people don't say often screams louder than what they do. That's why you perceive so clearly. That's why you're never truly surprised. You stopped expecting honesty from people who deceive themselves. And when they try to figure you out, they can't, because you don't fit the script. You're not in it for clout, control, or competition. You're here for truth, and that alone makes you a glitch in their system. You're not easily influenced. You don't follow trends. You study them. You don't jump to conclusions. You let reality reveal itself to you. That's power. And it rattles people who are only strong when they're in control. You're the eye of the storm, still centered and impossible to shake. Let them gossip. Let them wonder. Let them talk about your vibe in vague, confused terms. Because while they try to dissect your presence like a puzzle, you'll keep doing what you've always done, moving in silence, rooted in truth. And while they bend for acceptance, you'll keep standing for what's real quietly, unapologetically. That's the difference. You're not here to dominate. You're not here to be worshipped. You're here to awaken, to bring light to things people try to keep hidden. And light doesn't make everyone comfortable. It reveals dust, it shows cracks, it exposes what people tried to ignore. But genuine ones, they'll thank you for it. And that's who you're here for. So no, your presence doesn't disturb the peace. It simply reveals the truth beneath the noise, and that's why it can't be ignored. You don't intimidate them. Their lack of depth does. And your presence, it reminds them of just how far they've strayed from who they were meant to be. Number 5, you're not competing. You're composing a symphony they can't hear. They thought it was a race. You were building a whole new world in silence. Let them keep running in circles, chasing applause, fighting over scraps of attention. You moved differently from the start. While they were trying to outshine each other, you were outgrowing the whole arena. You never entered their competition because you saw how small it truly was. You didn't play their game not because you couldn't, but because you knew you were meant to build your own. They don't comprehend you, and they won't because you don't walk in their rhythm. You move on instinct. You don't chase trends. You respond to frequency. You sense what's coming before anyone speaks it out loud. You sense the subtle shifts in energy like a tide shifting under a calm sea. Others get caught off guard by what hits them. You already saw it forming in the distance. You didn't learn to predict the future. You learn to sense it before it arrives. There's a reason your words strike differently. Even when you say something simple, it lands heavy. It stays. Because behind every sentence is experience, pattern recognition, and truth. You don't speak to fill space. You speak to shift it. And when you do, people stop, listen, sense. Even the ones who don't understand why they're moved are. That's not talent. That's tuning in. You're aligned with something bigger than what they're pursuing. They're addicted to external signals. You trust the quiet wisdom of the inner pull. That's what builds your rhythm. That's why everything you do seems to unfold with meaning, while others are stuck guessing their next move. You stopped dancing to their noise and became the beat they couldn't match. Imagine this. They're sprinting across a stage built on performance, ego, and fragile pride. And you're walking through a different door entirely. While they try to one-up each other, you're building blueprints no one sees yet. While they scream over each other to be heard, your silence begins echoing louder than all of them combined. And one day, they'll realize you were never behind. You were simply moving to a rhythm meant to outlast them all. They start to ask, why does everything they do just click? How do they always seem 5 moves ahead? Why do their words cut so deep even when they speak so soft? Because you don't react, you respond, you don't panic. You prepare. You're not impulsive because you've already sensed the energy shift before it shows up. You sense what's off. You sense what's real. You don't rush because you already know where you're going. While they followed maps, you became a compass. And here's the secret. They could have had this too, but they were too busy trying to be loud to learn how to listen. They were too obsessed with control to recognize flow. You had to unlearn what they cling to. You had to get comfortable in silence, had to find value in patience, had to move through seasons of invisibility so you could master your own rhythm. Now look, everything makes sense. You're not racing anyone. You're creating waves in a frequency most people are too distracted to tune into. That's why your energy disrupts spaces without trying. Why people sense calm around you, but also challenged because something about you says there's more truth, more depth, more meaning. And whether they admit it or not, they sense the call. Your rhythm isn't made for quick wins. It's made for legacy. You're not trying to be witnessed. You're trying to build something worth being remembered for. So let them keep sprinting for followers, chasing validation, stealing styles, and mimicking movements. Let them pretend speed is success. You'll be in your own lane, unbothered, building something timeless. Because your rhythm, it's not random, it's coded in alignment. You move when it's right, you act when it's real, and you speak when it's time. You're not offbeat. You're simply playing a rhythm only genuine ones recognize, and they will in time. They'll start to notice how you don't crash when things collapse. You recalibrate. They'll notice how your life doesn't spiral with chaos, because you already adjusted your path long before it arrived. They'll notice how you always seem to know what's next, not because someone told you, but because you sensed it, watched it, waited for it. That's your power. That's what separates you. You didn't come here to compete for crowns. You came here to create frequencies that outlive trends. You came here to speak truth so layered it'll still echo when the noise fades. You came here to build a life that's aligned, not approved. So no, you're not one of them, and you never were. You are the rhythm that can't be rushed, the voice that doesn't need volume, the movement that reshapes the space without permission. And that's exactly why you'll always be ahead, even when they think you're behind. Number 6. You're not competing. You're composing a symphony they can't hear. They thought it was a race. You were building a whole new world in silence. Let them keep running in circles, chasing applause, fighting over scraps of attention. You moved differently from the start. While they were trying to outshine each other, you were outgrowing the whole arena. You never entered their competition because you saw how small it truly was. You didn't play their game, not because you couldn't, but because you knew you were meant to build your own. They don't comprehend you, and they won't, because you don't walk in their rhythm. You move on instinct. You don't chase trends, you respond to frequency. You sense what's coming before anyone speaks it out loud. You sense the subtle shifts in energy, like a tide shifting under a calm sea. Others get caught off guard by what hits them. You already saw it forming in the distance. You didn't learn to predict the future. You learned to sense it before it arrives. There's a reason your words strike differently. Even when you say something simple, it lands heavy. It stays. Because behind every sentence is experience, pattern recognition, and truth. You don't speak to fill space, you speak to shift it. And when you do, people stop, listen, sense. Even the ones who don't understand why they're moved are. That's not talent. That's tuning in. You're aligned with something bigger than what they're pursuing. They're addicted to external signals. You trust the quiet wisdom of the inner pull. That's what builds your rhythm. That's why everything you do seems to unfold with meaning, while others are stuck guessing their next move. You stopped dancing to their noise and became the beat they couldn't match. Imagine this. They're sprinting across a stage built on performance, ego, and fragile pride. And you're walking through a different door entirely, while they try to one-up each other. You're building blueprints no one sees yet. While they scream over each other to be heard, your silence begins echoing louder than all of them combined. And one day they'll realize you were never behind. You were simply moving to a rhythm meant to outlast them all. They start to ask, why does everything they do just click? How do they always seem 5 moves ahead? Why do their words cut so deep even when they speak so soft? Because you don't react. You respond. You don't panic. You prepare. You're not impulsive because you've already sensed the energy shift before it shows up. You sense what's off. You sense what's real. You don't rush because you already know where you're going. While they followed maps, you became a compass. And here's the secret. They could have had this too, but they were too busy trying to be loud to learn how to listen. They were too obsessed with control to recognize flow. You had to unlearn what they cling to. You had to get comfortable in silence. Had to find value in patience. Had to move through seasons of invisibility so you could master your own rhythm. Now look, everything makes sense. You're not racing anyone. You're creating waves in a frequency most people are too distracted to tune into. That's why your energy disrupts spaces without trying, why people sense calm around you, but also challenged, because something about you says there's more truth, more depth, more meaning. And whether they admit it or not, they sense the call. Your rhythm isn't made for quick wins, it's made for legacy. You're not trying to be witnessed, you're trying to build something worth being remembered for. So let them keep sprinting for followers, chasing validation, stealing styles and mimicking movements. Let them pretend speed is success. You'll be in your own lane, unbothered, building something timeless. Because your rhythm, it's not random. It's coded in alignment. You move when it's right. You act when it's real and you speak when it's time. You're not offbeat. You're simply playing a rhythm only genuine ones recognize. And they will, in time. They'll start to notice how you don't crash when things collapse. You recalibrate. They'll notice how your life doesn't spiral with chaos because you already adjusted your path long before it arrived. They'll notice how you always seem to know what's next. Not because someone told you, but because you sensed it, watched it, waited for it. That's your power, that's what separates you. You didn't come here to compete for crowns. You came here to create frequencies that outlive trends. You came here to speak truth so layered it'll still echo when the noise fades. You came here to build a life that's aligned, not approved. So no, you're not one of them, and you never were. You are the rhythm that can't be rushed, the voice that doesn't need volume, the movement that reshapes the space without permission. And that's exactly why you'll always be ahead, even when they think you're behind. Number 7, when they laughed, you listened. Now they whisper. They called it luck. You called it alignment. The difference, you were awake while they were performing. Funny how quiet they get when the tables turn. The same mouths that once mocked your silence now speak your name like a warning. They used to laugh when you pulled back, when you didn't follow the crowd, when you chose stillness over chaos. But now that everything you sensed has unfolded exactly how you felt it would, they can't meet your eyes because somewhere deep down they know you knew. And no, you never claimed to be mystical or prophetic. You simply listened. You trusted that internal voice that speaks in logic, wrapped in instinct, fact mixed with frequency. You read the air, not just the headlines. You studied patterns, not gossip. You saw the shifts in energy before they even showed up in conversation. You've always walked that razor-thin line between reason and instinct. And that balance is what saved you. Instinct isn't magic, it's intelligence refined by experience. Imagine this, a storm approaching, everyone laughing, calling you paranoid for stepping inside early. Then the thunder strikes. The same people who mocked you start scrambling for shelter. You're already dry, calm, sipping tea by the window. That's your life, isn't it? Always one step ahead. Not because you chase control, but because you respect signals others ignore. They'll call it coincidence to protect their pride. They'll call it good timing to downplay your clarity. But you and the universe know better. You've been guided by something far more exact. Awareness. You perceive things others label unexplainable. But you don't need to explain what you understand. That's the advantage of walking with truth instead of ego. You never have to prove it. They move by reaction. You move by recognition. And that's why your path looks so smooth from the outside. It's not luck, it's discernment. You don't panic when energy shifts. You pivot. You don't argue when people reveal their masks. You simply observe. You've learned that most disasters come with warnings. You simply happen to be one of the few who pays attention. Now they're watching you differently. The whispers aren't insults anymore. They're curiosity. How did they know? How did they see it coming? Simple. You didn't need a sign. You became one. Number 8. Your gift is the reason they left. And the reason you're still standing. You weren't abandoned. You were set apart. Because the loud can't stand what the wise don't need to explain. This gift you carry, it's sharp, heavy, and divine in its design. Not the kind of gift that arrives with applause or trophies. No, this one arrives with distance, with silence, with people slowly drifting away. Not because you change, but because you stayed real while they stayed performing. Let them. Because your isolation, that's not punishment, it's protection. See, the truth is, your presence exposes the lack in theirs. You don't need to flex brilliance. It leaks through your silence. It bleeds into every space you enter. You are the shift that makes shallow people uncomfortable, that makes fakes run. You didn't lose them. They lost access to a frequency they were never willing to rise into. And you sensed it early. That tightening in your chest, that sense of disconnection when surrounded by noise, it wasn't social anxiety. It was spiritual intelligence saying, this space isn't for you anymore. Some are loved for being relatable. Others are isolated for being real. You walk through life tuned into something higher, something cleaner. While they chase claps, you follow calling. While they measure their worth by the company they keep, you've learned to measure yours by the peace that stays when everyone else leaves. They think you're cold, detached, distant. But they don't comprehend that your distance is a boundary, not bitterness. They don't grasp that your silence is not a lack of things to say. It's the refusal to waste energy explaining depth to those who only swim in the shallow end. You were never meant to be the echo. You were built to be the origin. Let them doubt. Let them whisper. Let them try to define you with the words they stole from others. Imitation always hates originality, and what they sense when they're around you is not arrogance, it's clarity. They can't fake what you were born with. So instead, they label it, misunderstand it, distance themselves from it. And still you rise. You keep walking. You keep choosing peace over applause, truth over attention, stillness over chaos, because you don't need a crowd to know who you are. Your gift may isolate you, but it never leaves you empty. It aligns you, it protects you, and most of all, it keeps you ready. Number 9, you're the calm before every storm they never see coming. Real power doesn't announce itself. It simply walks in, shifts the atmosphere, and lets the silence do the talking. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone in the space because you are the reason the space shifts. While they scramble to be witnessed, to be heard, to be praised, you're observing, calculating, reading the energy. You know what's genuine before it's revealed. That's why your silence is so damn loud. It holds more weight than all their noise combined. They sense it. Oh, they definitely sense it. That tension in the air when you say nothing, but everyone begins looking at you like you've already spoken. That's not intimidation. That's truth recognized. You don't flex your intelligence because you don't have to. Your presence reveals the gaps in their logic, the cracks in their image, the lie in their performance. That's what scares them. It's not what you say, it's what you see. You speak with your eyes, command with your energy, and destroy egos with your silence. They call you quiet until they realize you were the only one genuinely thinking. You weren't ignoring the conversation. You were dissecting it. You weren't avoiding the game. You were already 3 moves ahead. That look in your eyes, that calm, piercing stillness. It's not confusion, it's control. Your instinct has never failed you, and it never will as long as you keep your mind clear and your perception clean. You know the difference between noise and signals. You know the moment energy shifts when words stop aligning with intentions. You don't need receipts. You sense truth in your bones. People fear what they can't fool, and your silence says, you can't fake it here. They won't always say it out loud. They won't admit how unsettled they sense when you're around. But trust this, they know you're intelligent, scary intelligent, the kind of intelligent that doesn't perform, doesn't explain, doesn't need validation to move correctly. The kind of intelligence that disrupts false confidence and reveals the difference between cleverness and consciousness. So stay quiet, stay locked in, let them keep underestimating you until they realize they've been playing checkers on a board you built. Your silence isn't empty, it's fully armed, and when the moment arrives you won't speak. You'll strike. And so here we are on the other side of every whisper, every side eye, every space that couldn't hold your frequency. You've witnessed the truth, walked through the fire and stayed silent while the world tried to decode you. But now no more hiding. This is your moment. Move with clarity. Trust your instinct. Let your presence do the damage. If this transmission struck home, drop 77 in the comments to claim your power. Like, subscribe and share this with someone who